Today we're going to walk through a day in the life as a digital marketer. Hi, my name is Will and I have spent 8 years working in the digital marketing industry. Currently I work as a digital marketing data analyst, a senior data analyst, and I've been doing that for 3 years. And then before that, I worked for 5 years at a top performance marketing agency in my state as a digital marketer. And I actually want to go back in time and talk about a day in the life as a digital marketer because that's a very common job title and people want to know. So now I don't work that job, but I worked it for 5 years, so I know how it is, and I really think it is the best foot in the door job to get into digital marketing that you can think of. People are constantly looking for entry level people for this, and even if you don't have a degree or experience in the field, you can get your foot in the door, and that's what I did. And let's get into how it was. So there's two eras to this. There's pre-pandemic and post-pandemic that I'll have to address. So you can probably guess the difference. Post-pandemic, they got much more inclined to letting you work remotely full-time. But we're going to cover the pre-pandemic one first because I think that's still kind of the norm. A lot of people are shifting back to making you work in the office or working at least hybrid. So we'll kind of cover that, and then we'll touch on the post-pandemic one as well, because that's kind of what I do now. So the pre-pandemic lifestyle is one where I would have to drive in and commute to the office. Luckily, I only lived about 15 minutes away from the office. We had a great office, and from there, you clock in typically at 9 a.m. or whenever they want you to show up. Now we had a kind of a young company, so you could actually come earlier and start the day earlier. We did have a few morning birds who would like to start at 7 a.m., 8 a.m., get a head start on the day. And it really depends on your company. I think at my company, they kind of prefer these types of people who kind of started earlier and kind of left a little bit earlier too. Some even just like stayed until the rest of the team left, or they left a little bit earlier, especially if they're managers, because most of the team weren't people who wanted to wake up that early. But I think the company did seem to favor these people more versus those who were kind of night owls. So they didn't frown. I would say they didn't look happily on people who showed up late after 9 a.m. even if they worked later afterwards. That was just the company vibe. You don't show up late. It varies depending on the company. So then you show up, and we actually went through a few phases in the company of doing different things. But for a while, what we would do is we'd have different teams, which we would call pods, and each pod was like 5, 6, 7 people. And we would start the day by doing this like Kanban board exercise where we would go through the top 3 things we had to get done by the end of the week, and also do like a mini stand-up where we're standing up and we go through the top 3 things each of us would do that day. We would go through it usually on a whiteboard with our manager, and then we would clap hands almost like a team and get to work. Now my tasks usually involved a lot of SEO and pay-per-click activities. Since I was more strong in SEO, that was kind of my specialty, so I did more SEO tasks. You'll typically find at an agency, while you may start off as kind of a jack of all trades, at some point, maybe after 2 years in, they will want you to kind of specialize in one role. And that's usually where you get more raises. Like if you're going to be the Facebook ads guy, be the Facebook ads guy. There were a couple who kind of just preferred staying as a jack of all trades, but I did feel like the standouts in the company were usually the ones who were like, hey, I'm the ads manager guy. And especially if you're an agency that has a lenience to like delivering more of a certain service line, that's probably the service line that you want to specialize in. Because I did feel like the PPC, pay-per-click people who kind of managed ads, that was the bread and butter of this agency, like it or not SEO. So those people, I think they got seen a little bit higher, with a bit more higher regard at the company. But that's just my opinion. Maybe that's others saw it differently, and they thought the SEO people also got some good regard. Regardless, that's kind of what I did. And if you're not familiar, SEO stands for search engine optimization, and this revolves around a lot of tactics and strategies with optimizing your website and pages on your site to rank higher on search engines organically without paying for placements. Whereas pay per click or advertising is a form of advertising where you basically more or less pay real money to show up in search results or on social media feeds per click sometimes, or sometimes per impressions or so forth, hence the name. And so you can specialize in Google ads or Facebook ads, or sometimes do a mixture of both or some other ad platform. And so that's kind of what I did. My typical day would be on a laptop. We were all issued laptops, and just working there. And there'd be people to the left of me, to the right of me. Typically, we would just do our own things, but the more social or talkative of us would maybe every hour, every 30 minutes, every 2 hours. Sometimes we were all in our zone, so it'd be like every two hours. They have some light conversation, small talk, goof around a little bit with us for 2-3 minutes before getting back to work. I was kind of like a productivity junkie, so I think I took things too seriously. Like, I didn't like it if like the small talk went beyond 2 or 3 minutes, even though no one was breathing down my back to like get back to work. And so I'm sure even though the owners of the company really liked it, how productive I was, if you ask them, like, I think maybe I could have like just spent more time building rapport and bonding. And I think I did a lot of that after work hours, just a bit more. Like, sometimes I'd chat with anyone who's still around for like 15 minutes before they all left their jobs. But it wasn't until later on in that organization when I really started to try and build more rapport and realize it wasn't all about getting things done. It's also about building relationships and friendships and enjoying the company of the coworkers. So I actually did a lot more of that later on, especially during the lunch break. So you break for lunch around noon, and at our company, it was kind of flexible in the sense that you can take your lunch hours whenever, or you can skip lunch. And as our company grew, probably by year 3, 4, and 5, while I was there, it got to a point where a lot of people were skipping lunch and just working the whole day. Now, your mileage may vary depending on how stressful and fast-paced your company was. Our company was kind of medium. It was an agency, so you couldn't, you weren't expected to skip lunch. You can take the lunch break, but to get all the work done and get it all done in a timely hour, I think the culture just started to move more towards people skipping lunch. There was still, plenty of people who still stuck around for lunch, but it was probably like a fraction of the company towards a later time. But whereas in the beginning, like, most people still, spent time at the lunch table, chatting, talking about the randomest things, skiing and so forth. So that was a great thing, and that's kind of how my day went. I would spend like, around 30 minutes on average at the lunch table. I bring some food I brought myself, heat it up, and just be chatting with other coworkers there. We talk about random things like Game of Thrones, and then I get back to work and back to the grind of things. The actual tasks I had to do consisted of sometimes meetings, and these meetings are usually like weekly recurring meetings with clients to check in on ad performance or stuff like that. Usually I wouldn't be alone. There'd be another team member there, especially when in my junior years, to kind of guide me along. But sometimes there could be internal meetings with your other team members to kind of check in on the progress of your work, see if everything's going. And you can also yourself schedule meetings with coworkers, with your manager, if you need a certain task done or you need someone's opinion on something because they're an expert at it. So I think my company was generally fairly reasonable and chill. So although we were all busy, like, if I saw a slot on someone's calendar, I could schedule it in and get some feedback on something. And since everyone worked in the same office, like, it wasn't really that bad to meet someone. Typically, we would not take our meetings at our desks, at least early on, because we had dedicated office rooms for meetings where it was kind of more soundproof, and then the client could get a full experience. But I would say there were certain parts where we started to outgrow certain offices, and we were in between moves to bigger offices where all the meeting rooms were taken, and there were times where we had to put on our headphones and take meetings at our desk. And so on average, for me at least, on a typical day, I would take anywhere from 1 to 5 meetings a day. On average, it would be somewhere around 2 to 4, which really isn't that bad when you consider a meeting's like 30 minutes long usually. So it really wasn't too much for me. And because I was more of a operator in the sense that I was doing more of the work rather than delivering and presenting the work to clients most of the time, I didn't have to be in as many meetings. So some weeks I would get by with just like 3 or 4 meetings total that week. And then last but not least, probably on average once a week, sometimes once every other week, I would have a 1 hour meeting with my manager. These are called one-on-ones, and it's pretty common. In most companies, you'll run into something like this. And so that's kind of how my day went. Other tasks that kind of took up the work were SEO tasks. So sometimes that meant like actually taking the content of a page, doing keyword research, optimizing that page based off suggested keywords. Other times it was some link building task to try and get links to that page. Other times it was a advertising task. And depending on your agency, some of these may be just like cookie cutter instructions laid out for you. But I find that like you still have to do a lot of your own work sometimes to innovate, because these tactics are constantly changing. So to kind of keep up with trends, I think it's always good to do research, come up with your own ideas on how to optimize these things, and then introduce those ideas, because I do think the fundamentals will stay the same, and they probably have standard operating procedures and tasks for you on how to optimize this campaign, or check the keywords in Google Ads and add negative keywords to that to block out keywords you don't want. Those are common tasks that you may find, but those tactics only get you so far, and they like stay ahead of the competition. You also will have to do some of your own research, introduce new ideas, and so forth. So yeah, it really just depends on your organization. I would say for mine, it once again sat in the middle, where sometimes they had cookie cutter SOPs for you to tell you how to do a task. Other times, since they were such a rapidly growing agency, they didn't have time to bake out fully fledged instructions for you. So you kind of had to learn it on the spot, verbally or visually through another team member showing you, which is still kind of nice. Or you get some instructions and then you have to figure out the rest on your own. So you're never left completely on your own in the water, which is really nice, and why I think it's still a fantastic job. But that's kind of the day-to-day of the task done. And then you try and close out the day around 5 p.m. And some people may end earlier, some may end later. And yeah, you just kind of file out at your own pace and get the work done, and then you're good to go. You can go home, you could do whatever. The rest of the day is yours. Some people go to the gym, some people watch TV. I honestly didn't know what a lot of my coworkers did. But some of them went home to play with their pets or go raise their children that were just born. So it just depends. But I found it to be a fairly reasonable agency. Some agencies work their employees to the bone, but I found one that had a decent work-life balance, where it was slightly more work intensive, but nothing too crazy that I couldn't complain about. Or I should complain about, because it was fantastic. And in fact, my next agency actually had me do more work. I probably worked on average more hours at the next job I had as a senior data analyst. But that comes with greater pay, greater freedom, a lot of other things. So it just depends on what you want. But that's kind of how the day goes. Now let's see what happens after the pandemic. So similar type of thing, but imagine it all remote. So when the pandemic hit, the owners who were kind of hesitant to do anything remote, even though we did all our work digitally, they became more open to doing things digitally. And through that, what we found is that, hey, this actually kind of works. So everything's remote, and what that allowed me to do was to cut commute times. So I saved about at least 30 minutes a day commuting in and out of the office. And then I would probably roll out of bed, get ready for work, and then just get right into work. and then when work ended, I could just cut it off right there, and then boom, um, my I could do what I wanted. So I would say the first year of the pandemic, I found that I had a noticeable amount more free time, and that was also partially because the gyms were shut down too. So I was doing home workouts. So I also cut out like 30 minutes of commute going to the gym and back from the gym, and so. And plus, there are days I just didn't want to do a home workout. That didn't seem like a great workout, anyways. So all those things together, I just had more free time with the pandemic, but it really just like led to more flexibility. But the other thing was like there's a lot less of an in-person experience. There's no water cooler chat. At my agency, back when we were in office, we had a water cooler. We had a whole kitchen where people ate and stored their food, and we even had a whole snack area where they bought this like fairly expensive like monthly snack subscription company, and there would be like a bunch of snacks there, just standard stuff, chocolates, chocolate quinoa, some like unique stuff too, chips, uh, various protein bars, granola bars, nuts, stuff like that. And then like they started to add on more snacks just like through I guess like an Instacart from the nearby Costco. And so it was pretty nice, and a huge like plus when I first joined the agency work, because like I never had that before in anything I work with. So I love going to the office and getting snacks. But over time you start to get used to it, and then the pandemic hit, and then you miss certain things like that. It's like, oh, I don't have snacks anymore. But they try and make up for it. I noticed a strong reduction in those social interactions, but over time you got used to it, and you're like, hey, it's fine. Like the flexibility of being able to sometimes work from your couch, like the couch back there I have, or just roll out of bed and get to work, or work from a coffee shop if you want one day. It was so freeing. And later on in my next job, I was able to do some traveling while working, and that was just like even more amazing. And I was like, wow, this is the life. So it really just depends. There's pros and cons. I do still miss the social interaction bit sometimes, and I try and remedy that outside of work with social activities, or sometimes I work from a coffee shop. But it is one of those things that I still miss. But there are trade-offs to life. And so, I've never worked a hybrid schedule, but I'm sure it's very similar, where some days you go into the office and you're required to, which may be a bit of a drag, and then some days you can just wake up and go to bed, go to work. And so that's the story. That's a day in the life of working as a digital marketer. And yeah, it's pretty standard. It's one of those office things. And I would recommend, if nothing else, you choose one where there's kind of a young energy to the company. Because at least for me, I really like that. I have some friends who are engineers, and they work for the government or some other places where everyone else is like a generation older to them, and I just wouldn't have found that as exciting and fun. I worked with peers, people that were my age, and you just get a young energy and feeling to it that just like keeps you alive, and it's just more fun. And it just also adds to the ambiance of the place. Like, for example, we never had full-on cubicles with the walls all the way up. Why? Because a lot of the young people, when surveyed, they were like, please don't do this. My dad had this or whatnot, and it'd just be terrible. So we had our desks, but we had little small glass separators that were opaque, and we could still see each other. They weren't high enough that they would like block each other completely. And so it kind of still was a little bit of a separator, but not enough to really like seclude us. And so those different things helped. But certainly, I would say if you are new in the workforce and you're going into something that's fully remote first, or maybe you're mad because you're not going into something fully remote first, and you're like, oh God, I have to go into office. Dude, I think going into the office and in person is going to really improve your social skills, and avoid you having certain social skills deficiencies in life. So like you shouldn't be so quick to like just find the luxuries of like the perks of working from home, because there's a time of life where you need to grow and develop these things. And some people may be like, oh, I'm socially skilled enough, I don't need this, blah blah blah. Maybe not. Like, do you want to take that risk? So I think, at first, don't be mad if it's in person. Plus, there's things I miss about it that I really think people undervalue. I think it's a great feeling to like see people on a recurring basis, go to the lunch and like see them on occasion, build that small talk. And like even when I was there working in person, my social skills kind of sucked. So over time, I had to take more initiative and do more to socialize with these coworkers, because some days if I didn't, no one would talk to me even at work. And so it really is something where you still have to come out and take initiative even if you are in a semi-social setting working in person. So I think it does teach you a lot, and I do miss it sometimes. And so have that era in life where you do have that and develop that, and then maybe in the future then you can look into the perks of working from home and just like developing that ability to socialize more and just be free and socialize on your own time and just work from home whenever. So that's my story. Thanks for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and join my free email newsletter for exclusive tips. Link is in the description on how to get a job as a digital marketing analyst. I also throw in some tips on how to get a job as a digital marketer as well. So check those out.